Number 1.
Kwame was born in Syracuse, New York when his mother was 16 years old. His mother stated the child's presumed father, Damian Davis, was extremely abusive physically and lied to her about his name and age. He told her he was 18 years old when in fact he was in his late 30s. The couple met in 2004 when Kwame's mother was 15. They lived together in an apartment in the 100 block of South Carbon Street in Syracuse after Kwame's birth. In 2006, the child's mother left and returned to her family. She never saw her son again, but she lied to the Department of Social Services and said Kwame was living with her. In July 2009, the police received a tip that Davis knew the whereabouts of a missing child. Photos of Davis are posted with this case summary. When interviewed, he said he had given Kwame to a man in Brooklyn, New York sometime during July 2007. He said he believed the man was named Yusuf Ben Ali and he had never met him before. Ali was reportedly a member of the United Nation of Moors, also known as the Nuwaubians, a black power group. Davis said he was unemployed and that Ali promised the Moors would take care of Kwame until Davis was stable again. He believed the group may have taken Kwame to Georgia. Ali gave him a phone number to call, but it turned out to be out of service. Authorities later determined that Kwame was last seen in Syracuse in late November 2008, nearly a year and a half after Davis claimed to have given him away. Davis uses many aliases, including the names Jakeef Davis, Rakeef Davis, Zaquin Ross and Zaquin Rose. He rarely uses his real name. Authorities stated they don't believe his explanation as to Kwame's disappearance. There was initially some confusion as to just when Kwame disappeared and how old he was. Some reports give his age at the time as between 8 months and 1 year, and sometimes the date of disappearance is given as December 1, 2008 or sometime in 2006. In December 2009, Davis was charged with child abandonment, third-degree rape and endangering the welfare of a child. The latter two charges were for his sexual relationship with Kwame's underage mother, and the child abandonment charge was for Kwame. In April 2010, however, the child abandonment charge was dropped. Davis assaulted another woman with a metal pick in October 2010. The following year, he was convicted of several charges relating to the attack and sentenced to 1 1/3 to 4 years in prison. Mustafa Burrell was convicted of assaulting Edward Phillips in 2011. The attack was supposedly related to Kwame's disappearance. Both men are friends of Davis and they had been roommates at one time, and Phillips allegedly cared for Kwame on a regular basis. Burrell stabbed Phillips in the neck in December 2008, allegedly because he was asking too many questions about Kwame's whereabouts. This was over 6 months before the child was reported missing. Burrell was convicted of second-degree assault and sentenced to the maximum term of 7 years in prison. DNA tests in September 2011 proved that, contrary to expectations, Davis was not Kwame's biological father. Both he and the child's mother had believed he was. The rape prosecution went forward regardless. In April 2012, Davis was convicted and sentenced to the maximum term of 1 1/3 to 4 years in prison, to be served consecutive to his other sentences. Investigators believe Kwame was killed and stated they might file homicide charges even if he is never located. His case remains unsolved.
Number 2.
Sometime during May 1981, Roman told his mother he was enlisting in the U.S. Army for 20 years. He lived on Hone Avenue in the New York City borough of the Bronx at the time. Roman has never been seen again. His family members contacted the military and discovered there was no record of Roman enlisting in the Army in 1981 or at any other time. Roman's relatives learned that he had a residential address on West Bay Avenue in Tampa, Florida shortly after his disappearance. Stacks of unused personal checks from First National Bank in Tampa were discovered at his home, along with other personal possessions. He never cashed a tax refund check dated June 10, 1981. A friend told Roman's family members that Roman held a Florida driver's license, and it was discovered that he owned a red Buick or Isuzu automobile with a black interior. He also owned a .25 automatic pistol, which was apparently registered in Florida as well. Florida records have been searched, and no trace of Roman was discovered past 1981. Roman was born in Arecibo, Puerto Rico and raised in the Bronx in New York City. After graduation from Samuel Gompers High School, he attended Hunter College in the Bronx for 1 year. Roman was dismissed from the U.S. Air Force in 1979, 2 years prior to his disappearance. He was previously employed with Time Life magazine in the New York City borough of Manhattan prior to May 1981. He frequented Mexico prior to his disappearance. He had a girlfriend there. He also liked to socialize in bars and clubs. Roman's case remains unsolved.
Number 3.
Ruchi was last seen at her apartment in the vicinity of the 6500 block of Lincoln Avenue in Lockport, New York, at 9 p.m. on August 9, 2005. She has never been heard from again. After her disappearance, her apartment was found to be neat and clean without nothing missing except her keys. It appeared as if Ruchi had left and intended to be back shortly. Bloodhounds tracked her scent to the skateland down the road, then lost the trail. Ruchi's ex-boyfriend, a former prison guard named Roger L. Hueber, was awaiting trial on several child sex abuse charges at the time of Ruchi's disappearance. 2 counts of third-degree rape, 2 counts of third-degree sodomy, 2 counts of unlawfully dealing with a child, and 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. Prosecutors alleged he provided alcohol to, went skinny dipping with, and had sex with 3 girls between 13 and 17. Ruchi disappeared 2 weeks before she was supposed to testify against Hueber, and both authorities and her family initially thought she had gone into hiding to avoid the obligation. 3 weeks after she was last seen, Ruchi was indicted as Hueber's co-defendant for criminal sexual acts, sex abuse, and unlawfully dealing with a minor. Hueber eventually pleaded guilty to third-degree attempted rape and 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. He served time in prison and was released in early 2010. Although Ruchi is still listed as a wanted person, investigators no longer believe she ran away because of the criminal case, as they don't think she would have been out of contact with her family for this long. There have been several unconfirmed sightings of her in the Lockport area since her disappearance. Her case remains unsolved and foul play is suspected.
Number 4.
Marlene was abducted at gunpoint by a female suspect in the New York City borough of Brooklyn at 9:30 p.m. on October 21, 1985. Marlene's mother, Francisca Santana, met the abductor at Brookdale Hospital while giving birth to Marlene 3 days prior to the abduction. The woman admired the baby at the nursery window during visiting hours. She said it was the prettiest baby and the quietest one. Marlene was kept longer than usual due to jaundice, but eventually discharged with a clean bill of health. The suspect kidnapped the baby as her mother was leaving the hospital with her. The child was wrapped in a blue, pink and yellow swaddling blanket at the time of her abduction. The suspect threatened to shoot Marlene if her mother did not give her up. The 2 women walked together for 6 blocks, with the suspect pointing a gun at Marlene, then stopped at a deserted junkyard, and the suspect took the baby. Her mother gave the abductor her telephone number and asked her to call. The kidnapper escaped in a waiting car driven by an accomplice. Marlene and the suspect have never been seen again. Sketches of the abductor are posted with this case summary. She was 5'2" and 130 pounds and approximately 24 to 30 years old in 1985. She was Caucasian or Hispanic, with dyed red or blonde hair, and may have been wearing a wig. The abduction car was a white 1976 Chevrolet Malibu with red lettering on the door, possibly it was an unlicensed cab. The same week Marlene disappeared, a 2-month-old baby was kidnapped from another New York City hospital. The infant was recovered unharmed a few days later, and his abductor was arrested. The case is not believed to be connected to Marlene's, the timing was coincidental. Marlene's father was in the Dominican Republic at the time of the infant's disappearance and is not considered a suspect in her case. Francisca returned to the Dominican Republic after Marlene's abduction, as she didn't feel safe in the United States. She and Marlene's father had had 2 children before Marlene, and they subsequently had 2 more. The entire family still lives in the Dominican Republic and is employed at the family business, a small supermarket. Although it's possible that Marlene was sold for adoption, authorities don't believe her abductor was a professional criminal. Rather, they think the kidnapper was a mentally unstable woman wanted a child to raise and couldn't have one of her own. Marlene's case remains unsolved.
Number 5.
Santana was last seen being dropped off at a residence in the 200 block of South Boulevard in Nyack, New York on February 11, 2003. He was accompanied by Renea Boz Rivera at the time. Renea lived in the house. Santana has 3 children and resided in Haverstraw, New York in February 2003. In the process of investigating Santana's disappearance, authorities executed a search warrant at the house he visited on the day he went missing. They found drugs, drug paraphernalia, bullets, and a loaded gun, and arrested Amanda Stanley, who is Renee's girlfriend and also lives at the residence, as a result. It is unclear whether Stanley is suspected in Santana's disappearance, but investigators announced they suspected foul play in his case after the search and her arrest. Rene and his brother, Ricardo Rivera, were charged with second-degree murder in connection with Santana's case in July 2004. A photograph of Rene is posted with this case summary. Both men had been Santana's friends, and their children played together. Authorities believe he was killed in a fight over drugs. Rene was found guilty of the murder charge and 5 cocaine and marijuana possession charges in February 2005. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Ricardo pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter afterwards, and as part of his plea agreement, he said he would help investigators find Santana's remains. He refused to do so, however, stating they had been incinerated. Ricardo was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He is already serving a prison sentence for unrelated drug charges. Santana has not been located, but foul play is suspected in his case due to the circumstances involved. Orangetown, New York and Haverstraw, New York police are investigating his disappearance.
Number 6.
Monique was last seen in Albany, New York on March 29, 1990. She was last seen at approximately 8 a.m. as she prepared to leave for school. Her mother, Annie Graniella, was at work when she received a phone call from Monique at 12 p.m. Monique said she missed the school bus and would stay home for the day. She returned to the residence during the evening hours and discovered that Monique was missing. Graniella waited 8 hours to report her daughter missing because she thought investigators would not take the report unless the child had been missing for an extended period of time. Investigators started to search for Monique but found no evidence due to the period of time it took to report her missing. Authorities suspect that Monique was abducted by a stranger and possibly killed afterwards. Investigators have looked at the possibility that Monique's stepfather may have known someone who could have been involved in her presumed abduction. He was in prison at the time of her disappearance. Investigators considered that he may have gotten into an altercation with an inmate and that the inmate abducted Monique to get revenge towards him. They later determined that his prison sentence had no relation to her disappearance. It should also be noted that Monique and her mother relocated to Albany from New York City after a murder occurred in front of their residence. It's possible that Monique might have witnessed the crime, but they have no evidence that the murder is connected to her case. Child killer, Louis Lent, has been investigated for possible involvement in Santiago's case. He was convicted of murdering Massachusetts child, Jimmy Bernardo, a 12-year-old boy who was murdered in 1990, and was also charged with killing 12-year-old Sarah Wood who was abducted and killed in New York in 1993. Her body has never been recovered. Investigators have attempted to see if Lent could be involved in other cases. He's a suspect in the 1992 Massachusetts disappearance of 16-year-old James Lusher who disappeared while riding his bike to his grandmother's home. Lent has since confessed to the crime and led investigators to a pond where he allegedly disposed of the body. James has not been found. Lent is also considered a possible suspect in the 1985 New York disappearance of Karen Wilson, the 1986 New York disappearance of Tammy McCormick, and the Maine disappearance of Kimberly Moreau. Investigators have not found any evidence that Lent was involved in Monique's case. An adult male who was acquainted with Monique admitted to taking her to the State University of Albany campus about 5 days before her disappearance. He did not have permission from Monique's mother to take her there. He had seen Monique in the parking lot on Central Avenue and felt sorry for her. He purchased her snacks at the school cafeteria. He admitted to secretly masturbating while she waited in line. He was questioned in her disappearance less than 2 days after she went missing. He signed a typed written statement. He was not charged in Monique's disappearance and maintains his innocence in her case. He does not have a criminal record and stated some of his admissions were fabricated by investigators. Both of Monique's parents have since died from AIDS-related causes. Her disappearance remains unsolved and foul play is possible in her case.
Number 7.
John was last seen in Amsterdam, New York on February 24, 1997. He and his wife, Charlene, had separated more than a week earlier, and Charlene moved in with a friend in the 400 block of Guy Park Avenue. They argued on February 21, and John allegedly told his wife she might never see him again. On February 23, Charlene called the police to complain that John was stalking her. On February 24, he went to the bank, angry that he hadn't been able to stop payment on a $10,000 check to Charlene. John planned to travel cross-country in a mobile home to visit his daughter in California. He never arrived in California, and he has never been heard from again. His 1997 Chevrolet Astro van was located approximately 30 days after his disappearance at a grocery store parking lot in New Hartford, New York. The store manager said it had been there since around the time Sapienza disappeared. On March 20, 1997, 5 days after John's van was found and 7 days before a friend reported him missing, Charlene filed a power of attorney John had allegedly signed years earlier. The document gave her control over her husband's finances and real estate. Beginning in October of that year, she would withdraw what would total $480,000 from his investment accounts. In early 1998, she moved to Las Vegas with a boyfriend. The police stated Charlene didn't seem interested in locating her husband and refused to take a lie detector test. An unknown individual provided the Social Security Administration with a death certificate for John, giving the date of death as April 15, 1998. John is missing under suspicious circumstances. His daughter stated he cared very much about his money and material possessions and wouldn't have left them all behind to start a new life. John's daughter believes he was murdered, but his wife speculated that he left of his own accord, perhaps to travel overseas. His case remains unsolved.